Hey everybody, it's Mark Vogt with VOGTLAND Outdoors, and in today's lesson, you guys that are just learning how to string walk are going to learn how to calibrate your brain and your fingers and your bow for string walking. But first, the intro. Today's lesson is for the guys that want to learn string walking. To learn string walking, you're actually moving where you hold the string to form a gap between the top of your finger, the top of your first finger, and the arrow to give different angles on the arrow, which gives you different ranges. So this is what you would be anchoring and looking like if you were shooting at 10 yards, 20 yards, 30 yards, 40 yards, 50 yards, 60 yards, 70 yards, 80 yards, 100 yards, 120 yards. By walking your fingers up and down the string and then still anchoring directly under your chin, like with my technique, or you could anchor on the side of your face, but you're going to lose range that way. What you end up doing is changing the angle of the back of the arrow, that changes the angle of the front of the arrow, that changes the distance the arrow goes. So to learn how to accurately use that string walking, there's two things that you actually have to figure out. One, you have to figure out what your gap is for a 20-yard target, because that's a common starting place. Once you figure out what that is in terms of fingers, then the second thing that you need to learn is what's the gap, what's the change in that gap for a 10-yard change in distance. So two things. One, where's your 20-yard gap to start? And two, what's the change for the next 10 yards? Either 10 yards to go further or 10 yards to actually go shorter. So let's try that. I've got a 45-pound bow. This is a brand new bow. I just got it, and I have yet to calibrate my brain, my fingers to this arrow and this bow with this draw weight. So I'm going to be doing this all literally from scratch today. Now I have a good idea. You guys have heard in my videos, my other videos, that if you've got a bow that's already over 40 pounds, anywhere from 40 to 60, that a really good starting point for your 20 yards is about 3 fingers, measured like that. And one technique that I've used to show you guys this is I'm going to circle around the back of the camera. We're actually going to see what this looks like. When you use the VOGTLAND shooting method, step one is that you're going to pick that gap. 1, 2, 3. Slide your fingers all the way down. Step two is, there's our 20-yard target. You're going to draw back under your chin with this part of your finger. Step three is, you're going to look down the left edge of this string right here, just as close as you can, down the top of the arrow. Step four is you're going to put the tip of the arrow right smack on the middle of the target where you're aiming. And step five, you're going to try to do a very small motion release, tiny motion release, so that the gap for this first 20-yard test is going to be 3 fingers. I'll be holding it underneath my chin right there, but this is what my sight picture is going to look like that. Looking down the left edge, tip of the arrow right smack on the target, small motion release. So let's give that a try. You're going to see me make little variations, stuff like that. Step one of my method, my 5-step method, pick my gap, 20 yards, 3 fingers. Step two, draw back under my chin. Step three, look down the left side of the string. Step four, put the tip of the arrow right smack on what I'm aiming at. Step five, small motion release. It's hard to do this while I'm talking, so this next shot will be more accurate because I'm not going to talk, okay? You guys have heard in my other videos, that's hard to do. Step one, choose my gap, 3 fingers for 20 yards. Step two, under the chin. Step three, look down the left edge of the string. Step four, tip the arrow on the target. Step five, we're actually coming along. Height-wise, I seem to be shooting a little high, so what I need to do is actually choose just a slightly larger gap. Not 20, but like a couple strings more than that. That's going to lift the back of the arrow up That's going to put the tip of the arrow down and bring it down a little bit. So let's see what that does. Here I am. Step 1, I picked my gap. Step 2, draw back under my chin. Step 3, look down the left edge of the string. Step 4, tip of the arrow right on the center of the target. Step 5, seems to be coming down a little bit. I'll try just a little bit more. This time I'm going to go not just 3, but 3 and a little bit more like that. Back to the method. I'm zooming in. I'm slowly honing in on what that 20-yard gap is going to be. My starting point for everything. I'm going down 20 and or 3 fingers and just a little bit more. I've chosen my gap. Step 1, choose my gap. Step 2, draw back under the chin firmly. Step 3, look down the left side of the string. 4, tip of the arrow on the target. Step 5. Oh, I like that one. Let's do that one more and see if we got that locked in. Step 1, choose my gap. About 3 1/4 fingers now. It's my 20-yard gap for this bow. Step 2, draw back under my chin. Step 3, look down the left edge of the string. Step 4, put the tip of the arrow right on the target. Step 5. Yeah, I'm liking that. I need to be a little steadier. I've got stuff to work on, but that's looking pretty good. You guys, I'm not going to zoom in on it any, but I see that I'm actually on the paper everywhere. On the paper, maybe just a hair high, but what I've locked in on is step 1 out of the 2-step method. Now I know what my 20-yard gap is. It's about 3 1/4 fingers, my starting point. Let me go pull my arrows, and now what we need to do is find step 2. We need to find out what's the interval in finger widths for the next 10 yards to get up to 30. Let me pause. Okay, I pulled all my arrows. We're off to a really good start. 2-step method, we already of calibrating for string walking, we already got number 1 accomplished. That for this brand new bow that I just got, Martin Jaguar, love it. 40-pound bow. I draw it out to 46 pounds actually. I have a larger draw. But now I know what my 20-yard gap is. That's the first step. My 20-yard gap is 3 fingers plus about 1/4. So that's going to be my starting point that I always use to start measuring for any other distance. The next step is that 10-yard interval. How big of a finger gap do I use for the next 10 yards? And what I've found, guys, and I'll share this with you, is usually somewhere between a 40-pound bow and a 60-pound bow. It's about a 1/2 finger for every 10 yards. So if my 20-yard gap was 3 fingers and 1/4, I'm going to go up a 1/2 finger to get to 30 yards. Just a 1/2 finger. That's easier to do than you might think. Let me show you. If I come around the back of the camera again, we know that for 20 yards, this is what it looked like. I went down to 3 and a little bit more. And there's what my sight picture looked like at 20 yards. I'm looking down the left edge of the string, putting the tip of the arrow right smack on the middle of the target and doing a small motion release. My gap change for 30 yards, which is that next one out there, right there, that gap change is going to be 3 1/4, and then I got to come up a 1/2 finger. Now, how do you measure that when you're dealing with that little weird quarter? I'll show you a quick technique. We're going to go and put the edge of our finger down here, and now I can just go up a 1/2 finger right there. So you're constantly moving, you're shifting your fingers around, but you'll be surprised how easy that is. Let's do it again. It was 3 1/4. There's my 20-yard gap, but I know I got to go up only a 1/2 gap, and this looks weird. It's not so weird. Just slide the edge of your ring finger down to where your thumb is, and now it's easy to measure up a 1/2 finger. That should be my gap for 30 yards. And here's what it's going to look like. I'll be looking down the left edge of the string, putting the tip of the arrow of the target, tip of the arrow on the target, and doing a smooth, small motion release under my chin. Let's give it a try. I'll always be aiming directly at the center of the target, nothing fancy with string walking. So here's my there's my 3 1/4 finger gap for 20, I shift my ring finger down to the edge so that I can pick up my next half finger. And now I've got my gap for 30 yards. Step 1, I've chosen my gap. Step 2, draw back under my chin. Step 3, look down the left edge of the string. Step 4, tip the arrow right, smack on the center of the target. Step 5, oh, I like that distance. I pulled a little left because that's what happens when I talk. Hell, I've been doing it all day. But the distance was really good, so let's do it again. Step 1, picking my gap. Start with that 3 1/4. Shift my ring finger. Let's go through that one more time. My gap for 20 was 3 1/4. I need to take a half off of that. I shift the edge of my ring finger, this one right here. This one. I'm at 3 1/4. I shift the edge of my finger there, and now I can easily measure up a half a finger for 10 yards. That becomes my gap right there, that little thumb. Put the tip of the arrow, look down the left edge of the string, put the tip of the arrow on a target, and that's what it's going to look like. All right, let's give it a try again. Step 1, choosing my gap. Step 2, draw back under the chin. Step 3, look down the left edge of the string. Step 4, tip the arrow on the target. Step 5. Oh, that looked really nice. That was like if this is the inner bullseye, it was like right here. So that's a kill shot. I'm perfectly happy with it. Next, it's time to move on over to the 40. So let me pause, get the camera set up over there. Okay, 2-step method for calibrating for string walking. Step 1, we were finding that first 20-yard gap, the starting point. Step 2, we're trying to learn what the interval is in string width for what the next 10 yards is, the next 10 yards. And we're finding out that most of the time, if you're between a 40, 45, and a 60-pound bow, like I tend to shoot, it's a half a finger for every 10 yards, and that seems to be working really well. So now we're aiming at 40 yards. Let me show you what we're going to do. Keep in mind the target's getting smaller because it's getting farther away. So you have to be really careful about that release. What we saw before was, over there at the 20, we started with a 3 1/2 finger gap, and it looked like that. Then we inched up half a finger to do 30 yards, and it looked like that. Now we're going to do 40, and you'll find out that that's actually really easy. You go down to your 3 1/2, you put the edge of your ring finger there, and now you know you just have to go up a full finger, and there's my 40-yard gap. So for aiming at 40, there's what it's going to look like. Look down the left edge of the string, put the tip of the arrow right smack on the center of the target, and a smooth, small motion release. Let's give it a try. Hope I'm not kind of in a weird spot. It's sitting on top of a log that's our barrier for the rain. Here goes. Picking my gap. There's 3 1/2. Going up 1 full finger. There's my 40-yard gap. Chosen my gap. I'm going to aim for what looks like the lower left target. I want to aim right for the center because, hey, I'm still calibrating this. So it's the lower left circle that I'm aiming at because it's nearly in the middle of the entire box. So step 1, I chose my gap. Step 2, draw back under my chin. Step 3, look down the left edge of the string. Step 4, tip of the arrow right on your target. Step 5, a little low and left. I'm talking too much. Let's shoot one more. Step 1, choosing my gap. Step 2, draw back under my chin. Step 3, look down the left edge of the string. Step 4, tip of the arrow on the target. Step 5. Yeah, much better. It's getting closer to center. Let me do one more to test. Choosing my gap. Actually, there's something I got to show you guys. I did it without thinking, and now I want to show you. We knew that for the 20-yard target, it was a 3 1/4 finger gap. I told you that to do 40 yards, then you only have to go up a finger. Well, that's the same as just saying a 2 1/4 finger gap, like that. So it's really easy to measure, you guys. You don't even have to work your way up from the 20. You'll just start to remember it's 2 1/4. Let's do one more shot here, and then I got to go pull my arrows, and we're going after 50. So here's me choosing my gap. Step 2, draw back under my chin. Step 3, look down the left edge of the string. Step 4, tip of the arrow on the target. Step 5, oh, absolute bullseye. If you guys got mobile applications, zoom in right there. That was an incredible shot. So what we're seeing right now is that we've got the 2 steps nailed down. Step 1, I know what my starting gap is for 20 yards. Step 2, I know what my interval is. It's a 1/2 finger that I need to go up or down for different distances. I go down, down, down if I'm going closer than 20 yards, like 15, like 10. We simply shift our distances down, and for higher distances, you're going with fewer and fewer fingers because you're lowering the back of the arrow up to raise the front of the arrow up so it goes a farther distance. When we pause the camera, go pull those, and we're going to finish up with 20 yards. Okay, I pulled my arrows that we shot at 30 and at 40 yards. It's looking really good. We've got our 2 steps down, our 2 pieces of information, the starting gap, the 20-yard starting gap, which is 3 1/4 fingers, and the interval for every 10 yards, which is a 1/2 finger. We're going to finish today. Maybe we'll go a little further, but we only have a 50-yard target. What changes? Only the gap. So we know we have to go up another 1/2 finger from the 40 yards that we just shot. Here's what it's going to look like. I'm kind of spread all over the place now, but there we saw at 3 1/4 fingers, there was our 20-yard target, and that's what the sight picture looked like. Then we moved up a 1/2 finger to get our 30-yard gap, and that's what the sight picture looked like. Then we knew that we could go 2 1/4 fingers, in other words, a whole finger up, to get our 40-yard shot, and that's what the sight picture looks like. I don't have my reading glasses on, so I hope the tip is on there. Now 50 yards, we're going to treat that like a 40, so 2 1/4 fingers. Well, let's start from the beginning. We start down here at 3 1/4. That's what it would look like for 20. It's 3 1/4. We know we got to go up 1 1/2 fingers from there. So I'm going to go actually slide down to the center of my ring finger, and then I know I can easily go right up 1 1/2 fingers, and there's my gap for 50. You're going to say, what? Do that again. Okay, let's do it again. This was 20. We know, and if I want to measure accurately 1 1/2 fingers, I'm going to slide my ring finger down there. I got to go up 1 1/2 fingers. That's 10, 10, 10, 30 yards to go from 20 to 30 to 40 to 50. So now I'm going to go up 1 1/2 fingers, and there is my gap for 50 yards. And there's what the sight picture looks like. You can experiment with different techniques. I could start at 3 1/4 here, slide my finger down to the middle of my ring finger, and now I know I only have to measure up a 1/2, a 1/2, a 1/2. And there's my accurate measure of the gap for 50 yards. You'll start seeing that your fingers become your best friend, because you can take a finger, a 1/2 a finger, you can take a 1/4 of a finger, you can take a 1/2 of a 1/2 of a 1/2, an 1/8 of a finger. You can get really precise. And even when you're shooting out at 50-yard targets, I'll make like an 1/8 of a finger adjustment to walk an arrow from the top, like hitting near the top of the target, to bring it down to dead center, and I'm actually shooting at dead center. So this is your best friend, because you can carry this in your pocket wherever you go. You could pick up anybody's bow, anybody's bow. If it's over 40 pounds, you can use the string walking technique, and it will work on that bow. It's not magic. It's not built for this bow. If it's around 40, 45, 50 pounds draw, you could pick up anybody's bow, and the stuff that you're learning right here today will work with that bow. It's not this specific bow. It's any 45-pound bow, shooting pretty much any arrow, is going to start off with a 3 1/4 finger gap for 20 yards and a 1/2 finger interval for every 10. So we're going after the 50 now. I'm going to stand up to the target. Hope I'm not in the way this time. I'm aiming again right for dead center, guys. I'm going to pick my gap. Step 1, I picked my gap. Step 2, draw back under my chin. Step 3, look down the left edge of the string. Step 4, tip of the arrow right smack in the center of the target. Step 5. Oh, that looked pretty good. It was a little left. I've been pulling left all day. We'll cover that in another topic. I got to turn my body a little bit sideways like this. I'm facing the target too much. Let's put another one in there, but the distance looked really good. Step 1, choosing my gap. Step 2, draw back under my chin. Step 3, look down the left edge of the string. Step 4, tip of the arrow on the target. Step 5, still just a little left. I'm going to stop talking this time. I'm going to do it right. Shh. Step 1, pick my gap. Step 2, under my chin. 3, down the left edge. Step 4, tip of the arrow on the target. Step 5. Oh, that looked really nice. Let's go take a look at it. Oops. Gotta put my bow down. So what did we learn? We learned that with this VOGTLAND shooting technique, but it doesn't apply only to my technique, it applies to string walking in general. There's 2 pieces of information that you need in order to calibrate your brain to your new bow and its arrow that it's shooting. 1, you need to figure out what the gap is for 20 yards. What's your initial starting gap? Step 2, you got to figure out what the interval is for every 10 yards, because then when you're out in the woods at targets and stuff like that, there. It actually did shoot a little bit low, but all that means is, and yes, you guessed it, we have to decrease the gap a little bit. Decrease the gap a little bit, and what we would see is that the arrow is going to start walking up to the center of the target. So there's still a little bit of calibration to go. Oh heck, let's go shoot one more time. I'm going to pause the camera. Okay, here we are back at the 50-yard target, and we're just doing a tiny little bit of adjusting. Actually, I'm not going to adjust. I'm going to continue to shoot at exactly that gap, because just shooting 3 arrows is not definitive to see if there's a pattern or not. So we're going to choose the same gap. There was 3 1/4 fingers to start, then up a half, up a half, up a half, in order to give me the next gap, a smaller gap, to bring the back of the arrow down, to actually bring the tip of the arrow up to shoot at ranges like 50 yards. Step 1, I'm choosing my gap. Step 2, drawing back under my chin. Step 3, look down the left edge of the string. Step 4, tip the arrow right on the target. Step 5. Oh, very nice. That looked better. I'm going to keep shooting at this gap. We're going to shoot 2 more and then go look. Step 1, choose my gap. Step 2, draw back under my chin. Step 3, look down the left edge of the string. Step 4, tip of the arrow on the target. Yeah. 1 more and then we're going to go take a peek. Step 1, choose my gap. Step 2, draw back under my chin. Step 3, look down the left edge of the string. Step 4, tip of the arrow on the target. Step 5. Oh, that looked really nice. Let's go take a look. Let me put the bow down. Let's go talk about what's next. So what we're seeing is that for every change in elevation, for every change in distance of 10 yards, all we have to do is change our gap a half a finger. What you guys may have noticed, this is the cool part about string walking, is I still got gap left over. I'm still shooting with 1 1/2 fingers under the arrow, which means I've got 10, a half a finger, 10, 10, 10. I can go to 60 to 70, even to 80 yards, and my finger is just going to be banging up under the bottom of the arrow. And I can shoot this method at 80 yards. And this is the kind of accuracy that we're getting, guys. Nothing. There's no magic in my method. I'm a 58-year-old guy. I'm an IT consultant. I sit in front of a computer and write AI software, machine learning software all day long. I don't sit out and shoot arrows all day long, and yet I can shoot like this at 50 yards with this technique, the VOGTLAND shooting technique that uses that level of string walking that you just saw calibrated to a bow that I just started shooting today. And I'm already shooting like that at 50 yards. So what's next? What's next is we got to go to 60 yards. What do? We just have to decrease that gap a half a finger. Now I'm going to have to get permission for the rest of my teammates out here to walk backwards from the shooting line another 10 yards and shoot. But we're going to go and shoot at 60 if that sounds fun, if they say yes. If they don't say yes, I hope you enjoyed this video. It teaches how to calibrate for string walking, how to calibrate your brain and your fingers for that particular bow and that particular arrow. But if that bow is 45 pounds and that arrow is some kind of an average arrow, then you can take that very same set, that pair of settings, 3 1/4 fingers, a half a finger for every 10 yards, and you can pick up anybody's bow and shoot that accurately. That is an amazing technique. I hope you guys really enjoyed this video. Feel free to subscribe. I'm getting about 30 new subscribers a month, so that's actually really cool. People way over in Turkey now are seeing stuff, people in Malaysia, people in Iraq, in Iran, in India. It's all kind of cool. I really appreciate you guys liking my videos. This is Mark Vogt with VOGTLAND Outdoors, and we'll see you out there. Cut. All right, the guys here are being really cool and letting me shoot way the heck back here in the parking lot so that the 40-yard target you see out there is actually a 60-yard target. What changes in string walking? Just the gap. Let's see what that actually looks like. We saw that for the 25-yard, it was 3 1/2 fingers, which means I got to go from 20, I got to go up 40 yards, so I got to go up 4 half fingers. So here's my 20-yard gap, and now I got to go up 2 full fingers. There's going to be my gap for a 60-yard shot. Let's see if you guys can see this. I'm making sure I haven't got anything in the way. I'm going to pick my gap. Step 1. Step 2, draw back under my chin. Step 3, tip of the arrow, look down the left side of the string, tip of the arrow on the target. Let's start over. Don't shoot when you're that anxious. Step 1, pick your gap. Step 2, draw back under the chin. Step 3, look down the left edge of the string. Step 4, tip of the arrow on the target. Step 5, and we're on the target. Let's do a couple more. Gosh, they look really nice when they're shooting at 60. Arrows go like this, like they're supposed to. Step 1, pick your gap. Step 2, I'm aiming for that lower left circle in case you're curious. Step 2, draw back under the chin. Step 3, look down the left edge of the string. Step 4, tip of the arrow on the target. Step 5, still pulling a little left. That target's really small at 60 yards, let me tell you. Let's try one more and then we're going to call it a day, because the other guys want to shoot. Step 2, step 1, pick my gap. Step 2, draw back under my chin, not my cheek. Step 3, look down the left edge of the string. Step 4, put the tip of the arrow on the target. Step 5. Oh, we gotta go look at that. Come on. Who knew barebow could be so easy? Who knew that string walking and anchoring underneath your chin is the secret? It gives you all the accuracy that a compound bow has. Only you're doing it with you. Not the release, not the sights, not the anything. It's you doing it. That means that this technique that I've been teaching you, you can put in your pocket and carry to any recurve bow that anybody wants to hand you. If it's between 45 pounds and 60 pounds, you'll be able to do this. And you're going to say, hey, Mark, there's still a whole 1 finger gap between you and the arrow. Just I can't shoot it here. There's not enough. But look at the distance. Look at the accuracy that I was getting. First time I'm shooting this arrow, this bow today. First time calibrating it today on camera, and all that implies. Got a whole peanut gallery over there of my teammates, my club mates, all watching me. They're all watching me do this, all nervous as heck. And look at how accurate that is. It's 60 yards. 60 yards is back there by that guy's, I'm standing next to that guy's red pickup truck, shooting through the trees, over the bull rack, and the whack down into the middle of a center of this target. And I was aiming for that one. My first one put me over here. I smoothed out and calmed down a little bit, got to there. When I told you I was aiming for that target on my third one, that's the one that I put in there. So there is the VOGTLAND shooting method, but today's lesson was all about how to calibrate string walking. Again, we go over it. You're trying to find two things. Trying to find out what that 20-yard starter gap is, and you're trying to find the interval between any 10 yards. And I just showed you the technique for how to do that. Hope you guys really enjoyed this. This is an outtake to the other one, so it looked like the film, this video, already finished, and I'm tacking this on at the end. Anyway, this is Mark Vogt with VOGTLAND Outdoors. Please feel free to share and subscribe to my channel, and we'll see you out there. Bye. Cut.